In a move that has ignited a diplomatic and economic firestorm, the European Commission has initiated an investigation into China's electric vehicle subsidies. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced the probe accusing China of artificially lowering EV prices through massive state subsidies and flooding global markets with these vehicles. The investigation could lead to punitive tariffs, raising concerns about potential retaliatory actions from Beijing. China has reacted sharply, terming the probe protectionism. China's Commerce Ministry has said the investigation is a naked protectionist act that will seriously disrupt and distort the global automotive industry and supply chain, including in the European Union, and will have a negative impact on China-EU economic and trade relations. It added, China will pay close attention to the EU's protectionist tendencies and follow-up actions and firmly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies. While some analysts believe Chinese EV makers can pivot to other growing markets like Southeast Asia, the probe could tarnish the international reputation of these companies as they expand abroad. Following this move, the Hong Kong-listed shares of major Chinese EV manufacturers took a hit, as did European car makers. This probe comes amid broader diplomatic tensions between the European Union and China. Relations have been strained due to China's relationship with Russia following the conflict in Ukraine and the EU's efforts to diversify its trade partnerships. The outcome of this investigation will set the stage for bilateral talks ahead of the annual China-EU summit, with the European Union seeking greater access to the Chinese market and a rebalance of the trade relationship. Industry insiders and experts have varying opinions on the investigation. While the China Passenger Car Association has expressed strong opposition to the review and called on the European Union to take an objective view of the industry's development, EU officials believe that Chinese EVs are undercutting local models by about 20% in the European market, pressuring European automakers to produce more affordable electric vehicles. As this investigation unfolds, it will be closely monitored for its potential impact on global trade and diplomatic ties between China and the European Union.
But global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars. And their price is kept artificially low by huge state subsidies. This is distorting our market. And as we do not accept this distortion from the inside in our market, we do not accept this from the outside.
Okay, let's go back to Shri for more on this. Shri, the business journalist and you can explain this better to us and put the entire issue into perspective. Why, of course, China gets upset about everything these days, but why is China seeing red over this move by the European Union? How is it likely to impact its EV industry? And is it likely to further strain ties between the European Union and China?
Only happy to explain this, Neha. So, Neha, the first thing we have to understand is that subsidies per se are something that every government around the world gives to its industries to help them from time to time. Now, the question is, how much subsidy and what is the subsidy really aimed at? Now, let me explain. So let's say you're giving an industry subsidy. Now, is that subsidy going towards research and development, adoption of newer technology, which eventually leads to innovation and greater efficiency? Therefore, the whole ecosystem improves. Or you are subsidizing inefficient production by absorbing their losses. So that is essentially what the debate boils down to. So every country gives subsidies. In the case of China, the only problem is its subsidies are massive. By various accounts, the subsidies range from 1.7% of the GDP to 2.5% of GDP. Now, we talked about EV. In the case of EV alone, over the last 7 years, it has given $57 billion in subsidies to EV manufacturers. Now, Neha, let me do a simple calculation for you. If one cost, the cost of one EV car, let's say, is $50,000, so when we talk about $1 million being given in subsidies, it effectively means 20 cars can be given away free for that price. So now 20 into 1,000, that's 20,000 is a billion. For $1 billion, we can give 20,000 EV cars free. So now 20,000 into 50, 1 million EV cars. So literally over the last 7 years, China has given away 1 million EV cars just to be able to compete in the markets. So that is outrageous, even for a European Union. And as a large supplier of all the critical raw materials that go into the EV battery, and that is the most important, component, the battery, the rare earths that go into the battery. And China is a monopoly supplier of many of these items. So it is able to, capture some advantage, additional advantage, apart from the government subsidies. So that is what is distorting the market. It also extends to not just manufacturing, but also agriculture. Again, billions of dollars China, puts in agriculture to subsidize exports. So China's core strategy, in some sense, has been to basically subsidize, build, invest in infrastructure. For example, the massive roads it has built, the BRI project itself, the Belt and Road Initiative itself, in some sense, part of that, whole thinking process, where it goes into countries and subsidize their losses and gets them to build. The hazard in this, the economic and the moral hazard in this, Neha, is that what kind of an economy are you eventually creating? So if you look at some of the problems that China is now grappling with, the problem of bad debt in the banking system, the problems in the real estate sector, this in some sense is clearly a manifestation of this underlying philosophy of throwing money at economic problems. So this is not sustainable. Whereas, most efficient countries, for example, US or even India to the extent, we believe in, subsidizing the upstream activities of companies so that the beneficial effects of technology, the improvements, everything can flow downstream and translates into more competitive products end of the day and better economic kind of health for the nation. So that is the real problem, Neha. Now, what does it mean for China's EV makers? They will take a hit, obviously, especially if European unions decide to impose tariff on these, exporters. So it's going to set them back. But don't forget that European Union also needs Chinese market for its own goods and services and vehicles, because they also sell non-EV cars in China, right? I mean, so it's going to be a very tricky rope for Europe to walk. It has to do this without really cheesing off Beijing and make sure that Beijing doesn't do something in return which will hurt their own industries, which are non-EV driven, Neha.
Well, you cheese off Beijing and the dragon starts breathing fire. How is...
By the way, Neha, this answer was mine too, because I don't think there's any chat GPT engine which is smart enough to answer your questions yet.
Well, that is the kindest thing anyone has said to me this entire month. You get extra points for that. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Neha.
Shri.